The day the exchange program began, Daniel never thought his decision would change his life forever. He was just an ordinary young man who had grown up dreaming of the stars, wondering what it might be like to see alien worlds up close. When the Galactic Council announced that humans could finally join their interplanetary cultural exchange, thousands applied. Out of millions of hopefuls, Daniel's name was selected. To him, it felt like winning the lottery, a chance to represent Earth in a galaxy that had only recently learned to accept humanity as equals. The shuttle ride from Earth was filled with excitement and nerves. Daniel pressed his forehead against the window, watching the planet shrink behind him, a glowing blue jewel fading into the dark. Around him, other humans whispered about what they would find, about how strange alien customs might be, and about whether they would even survive in a world so different. He stayed quiet, his thoughts racing, imagining the unknown face of the alien who would soon share a roof with him. When the transport finally arrived at the orbital station, Daniel stepped out into a world unlike anything he had seen before. The station pulsed with colors, lights flowing along the walls as if alive, and beings of every size and shape moved through its halls. Some floated, some crawled, and some walked on two legs like humans, though few looked anything like him. For a brief moment, Daniel felt small, lost in a sea of strange faces. Yet as he reminded himself, this was the whole point of the program. Bridges could only be built through courage. His assigned living quarters were simple but elegant, the walls lined with shimmering panels that changed hue depending on the light. Daniel placed his bag on the bed and took a deep breath, waiting for the knock that would change his life. When the door finally opened, he turned, expecting someone intimidating, maybe even terrifying. Instead, he froze. Standing there was an alien girl unlike anything he had imagined. She was tall, graceful, and beautiful in a way that made Daniel forget his words. Her skin glowed faintly like polished crystal, and her violet eyes shimmered with light as though they held an entire galaxy inside them. Delicate strands of luminous hair cascaded over her shoulders, catching the station's glow like rivers of starlight. She looked both ethereal and real, something fragile yet powerful at the same time. The girl tilted her head, studying him with quiet curiosity. "You are human," she said softly, her voice carrying a melody Daniel had never heard in speech before. It was calm, musical, almost like a song. Daniel managed a nervous smile. "Yes, and, you must be my new roommate?" The alien girl stepped inside, her gaze never leaving him. She nodded, her expression unreadable, but there was something in her eyes, an intensity he didn't understand. She set down a crystalline case that seemed to grow smaller as it touched the floor, then straightened her posture with elegance. For the next few minutes, silence filled the room. Daniel tried to unpack his things, but he could feel her eyes following him. Every movement he made being studied as though she were memorizing him. When he finally looked up, their gazes met, and he felt a sudden warmth in his chest. It wasn't fear, it was something else. She finally spoke again, her voice softer now. "My name is Liara." The way she said it made Daniel's heart skip a beat. He realized then that this was not going to be a simple cultural exchange. There was something deeper, something unspoken, in the way she looked at him. And though he didn't know why, he sensed it already. Their connection would lead them into a story that neither of them could have ever expected. Daniel barely slept that first night on the station. The room was quiet, yet his thoughts spun endlessly. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Liara's glowing violet gaze. There was something about the way she had looked at him that made him uneasy, but not in a dangerous way. It was as though she was studying him for reasons she wasn't ready to share. When he finally drifted off, he dreamed of Earth, his family, waving goodbye, his best friend laughing, the ordinary life he had left behind. But the dream shifted, and suddenly Liara was there, standing on Earth's soil, her crystal hair glowing in the sunlight. She looked at him with the same expression she had worn in their room. It felt almost like a promise. The morning brought no answers. Liara was awake before him, moving gracefully around the room as though she had lived there for years. Daniel sat up slowly, unsure how to start a conversation with someone who wasn't even human. She broke the silence first. "Do all humans sleep so long?" she asked without looking at him, her voice gentle yet teasing. Daniel rubbed his eyes. "Back on Earth, this would be early. I guess time works differently here." Liara turned then, her lips curving in what might have been her version of a smile. "Perhaps. Or perhaps you are just slower than you look." Daniel laughed nervously, unsure if she was joking. The air between them felt strange, not hostile, but charged with something he couldn't name. Later that day, they were called to attend the first orientation for the exchange program. The large hall was filled with pairs, humans and their alien roommates from different species. Some humans looked overwhelmed, others excited. A towering instructor with skin like molten silver stood at the front, addressing the group in a voice that vibrated the very walls. "You are here to learn, not just to live. This program will test your patience, your understanding, and your ability to see past your own world. Fail, and you will return home in shame. Succeed, and you will become the bridge between your species." The words sank heavily into Daniel's mind. He could feel Liara beside him, still as a statue, her glowing eyes fixed on the instructor. He wondered if she felt pressure too, or if her kind never doubted themselves. After the session, Daniel tried to strike up conversation as they walked back. "So, what do you think of humans so far?" he asked. Liara tilted her head, studying him again. "You are curious, always asking questions, always watching, but you do not understand how dangerous that curiosity can be." Her answer caught him off guard. "Dangerous? I'm just trying to learn." She stopped walking, turning fully to face him. Her eyes glowed brighter for a moment. "To learn is good, but sometimes learning too much can bind you to paths you cannot escape." Daniel's chest tightened. There was meaning behind her words, something she wasn't saying out loud. He wanted to push her for answers, but something in her gaze warned him not to. So instead he stayed quiet, walking the rest of the way in silence. That night, as Daniel sat on his bed scrolling through the orientation tablet, he noticed Liara sitting by the window, her face turned toward the stars. She looked almost lonely, her usually strong posture softened by the glow of distant suns. For the first time, Daniel saw her not as an alien, but as someone far from home, just like him. He wanted to speak, to tell her she wasn't alone. But before he could, Liara whispered, so quietly he almost didn't hear, "I will not let them hurt you." Daniel froze. He hadn't asked a question, and she wasn't looking at him. It was as though she was speaking to herself, a vow carried by the silence. And in that moment he realized something terrifying. This was no ordinary roommate assignment. Something larger was unfolding, something that involved both of them. The following days on the station were filled with new experiences. Daniel attended lessons about alien cultures, laws of the Galactic Council, and the history of the Alliance. Some of it fascinated him, the way different species had once fought wars but now shared knowledge. Some of it terrified him, especially the strict rules about what humans could and could not do. Still, the strangest part of the program was not the lessons, but Liara. She was always near him, silent most of the time, but her eyes followed him as though he were the most important thing in the room. Whenever another alien came too close, she would position herself subtly between Daniel and them, as if guarding him. At first, Daniel thought it was just her nature. Maybe her people were protective. But as the days passed, he began to notice something else. Whenever he spoke, her expression softened. When he laughed, the glow in her eyes grew warmer, and when he was tired, she seemed almost worried, her gaze lingering too long. One evening, after another exhausting day of orientation, Daniel finally asked the question that had been building in his mind. "Liara," he said, setting aside his tablet, "why do you keep watching me like that?" She blinked, her face calm, but the faintest trace of emotion flickered across her features. "Because you are Unusual? Unusual? Daniel raised an eyebrow. I'm just a normal human. No, Liara said firmly. Not normal. Different. Daniel frowned, confused. Different how? She hesitated, her crystal-like hair shimmering faintly in the room's light. For the first time, her voice dropped lower, almost vulnerable. Because you are not afraid of me. Most would be. Daniel studied her, surprised. Why would I be afraid of you? Her violet eyes locked onto his, burning with intensity. Because my kind are not known for kindness. To many we are weapons. We are feared. But when you look at me, you see me as if I am just a girl. The words hung heavy in the air. Daniel didn't know what to say. He had never thought of her as anything else. Yes, she was alien. Yes, she glowed like crystal. But behind all of that, he saw a person. Someone who was lonely. Someone who carried weight on her shoulders. He wanted to answer, but before he could, a sudden chime rang through the station. A voice echoed over the speakers. Attention! All exchange participants are to report to the central hall immediately. Daniel stood, quickly, confused. What's happening? Liara's expression hardened instantly, all vulnerability gone. Something is wrong. They hurried to the hall where dozens of humans and aliens gathered. The silver-skinned instructor stood at the front, his voice sharp. There has been an incident. A human participant has gone missing. Evidence suggests abduction. Gasps filled the room. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. The instructor continued, You must all remain in designated quarters until further notice. This program is under threat. Trust no one outside your assigned partner. The group erupted into whispers, fear spreading quickly. Daniel glanced at Liara, who stood beside him, her expression unreadable. But her hand, glowing faintly, brushed against his arm as if to reassure him. When they returned to their quarters, Daniel couldn't stay silent. Liara, what's going on? Why would anyone abduct a human here? She looked at him for a long moment before answering. Because some do not want your kind here. To them you are intruders, and they will do anything to end this program. Daniel felt his chest tighten. But then I could be next. Liara stepped closer, her gaze fierce now. Not while I am here. I promised I would not let them hurt you, and I keep my promises. For the first time, Daniel realized just how serious she was. She wasn't just protecting him because of the program. It was something more. Something personal. And though he didn't understand it yet, part of him began to feel the same pull toward her, a connection growing stronger with every passing moment. The atmosphere in the station changed overnight. Where once the corridors buzzed with curiosity and cautious excitement, now they carried whispers of fear. Security patrols increased, drones scanned every corner, and the once friendly exchanges between humans and aliens turned stiff and quiet. Daniel felt the weight of it pressing on him every time he stepped outside his quarters. Eyes followed him, not with curiosity this time, but with suspicion. Some aliens muttered in languages he didn't understand. Even some humans avoided talking, worried about who might be listening. But through it all, Liara never left his side. She walked with him to every session, sat with him during meals, and always kept her gaze sharp, scanning the room like a guardian ready for danger. At first, Daniel thought she was just following orders. But the more time they spent together, the clearer it became. This was personal for her. One night after another tense day of classes, Daniel sat at his desk pretending to study the alien history files, though his mind was far away. He couldn't stop thinking about the missing human. What if it had been him? What if Liara hadn't been there to protect him? Finally, he turned to her. She sat near the window again, watching the stars as always, her crystal-like hair glowing faintly in the dark. Liara, Daniel said quietly, you knew this would happen, didn't you? You weren't surprised when they announced the abduction. Her glowing eyes shifted toward him slowly. For a moment she didn't answer, and he thought she might ignore the question. But then she spoke, her voice soft. I knew there were those who would resist. Not all species welcome humans. Some see you as weak. Others see you as a threat. And some see you as prey. Daniel swallowed hard, his stomach twisting. Prey? Liara stood, moving closer to him, her expression hardening. There are old rivalries in the galaxy, old hatreds that have not faded. The Council may claim peace, but peace is fragile. Your arrival threatens balances that were never meant to be touched. Daniel leaned back in his chair, her words hitting deeper than he wanted to admit. Then why bring us here at all? Liara's face softened again, and for the first time Daniel noticed the sadness in her eyes. Because some believe in change. Some believe your kind is more than others see. And some... She hesitated, her voice dropping. Some of us believe humans are worth fighting for. Her words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Daniel wanted to ask if she was speaking about herself, but before he could, a sharp alarm blared through the station. The walls lit with flashing crimson light, and a robotic voice echoed overhead. Unauthorized breach detected. Sector 7. All participants return to quarters immediately. Daniel's heart pounded. What's happening now? Liara grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong for her delicate frame. Stay close to me. They rushed into the corridor, joining a stream of humans and aliens being guided by drones. But as they moved, Daniel noticed something strange. Figures in the distance cloaked in shadows moving against the flow. He barely had time to process it before one of the figures broke from the crowd and lunged toward him. A flash of crystal light erupted. Liara stepped in front of him, her body glowing fiercely, shards of radiant energy forming around her hands. The attacker froze mid-strike, thrown back by the sheer force of her presence. Daniel stumbled back, eyes wide. What did you just do? Liara didn't look at him. Her gaze remained locked on the retreating shadow. I did what I had to, and I will do it again. For the first time, Daniel truly understood. Liara was dangerous, not just beautiful or mysterious. She had power, real power, and she had chosen to use it for him. But why? That question burned inside him as the alarms faded and security forces swept through. He didn't know what scared him more. The attackers lurking in the dark, or the possibility that his alien roommate was willing to fight an entire galaxy for him. The corridor was silent after the alarms faded, though Daniel could still feel the echo of the attack in his chest. His legs shook, not from the sprint, but from what he had just witnessed. Liara had unleashed a power he couldn't even describe. Bright, shards of energy that felt alive, deadly, unstoppable. When they finally returned to their quarters, Daniel couldn't hold back any longer. Liara, what was that? What are you? She stood in the center of the room, her crystal hair glowing faintly, her back turned to him. For a long moment she said nothing. Then quietly, she answered, I am what my people made me. A weapon, but one who chose not to be used. Daniel blinked, stunned. A weapon? You mean, you were trained to fight? Her violet eyes flickered as she finally turned to face him. Not just trained, engineered. My kind were shaped to channel energy, to turn it into destruction. In the old wars, we were feared across the stars. That is why others look at me with hate. That is why they call us monsters. Daniel stared at her, his mind spinning. She was speaking as if her very existence was a danger. Yet he didn't see a monster. He saw someone who had just saved him without hesitation. But you saved me, he said softly. If you were only a weapon, you could have let me be taken. Liara's gaze softened, and for the first time her voice trembled. Do you not understand, Daniel? You are not just another human to me. You are... She stopped, as if the words were too heavy to finish. The silence stretched, but Daniel felt the meaning even if she hadn't said it aloud. His chest tightened, and though he wanted to ask her what she truly meant, the knock at their door cut through the moment. Two security officers stood outside, their expressions grim. "We need statements from both of you," one said firmly. "The attackers escaped, but we need every detail." They were escorted to the central office, where officials questioned them for hours. Daniel repeated what little he had seen: the shadowy figures, the sudden lunge, Liara's glowing shield of energy. Liara herself spoke calmly, but Daniel noticed she left out details. She didn't mention her past. She didn't mention being a weapon. When they were finally dismissed, Daniel leaned close as they walked back. "Why didn't you tell them the truth?" Liara's eyes narrowed slightly. "Because the truth would not protect you. It would only give them more reason to fear me. And if they fear me, they will fear you for staying by my side." Her words unsettled him. Yet a part of him also felt strangely safe, as though being with her, this powerful, dangerous alien, was the only place he truly belonged. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He lay awake listening to the quiet hum of the station. Across the room, Liara sat by the window again, her eyes fixed on the stars. But this time she didn't look lonely. She looked conflicted. Finally, Daniel sat up. "Liara," he whispered. "Why are you protecting me? Really?" Her glowing eyes turned to him, shining brighter in the dark. For a long time, she didn't answer. Then she stood, slowly walking toward him until she was only a step away. Her voice was low, almost fragile. "Because when I look at you, I feel something I was never meant to feel. My kind are not supposed to care. We are not supposed to love. And yet..." She stopped, her words trembling, her eyes locked on his. Daniel's breath caught. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. He didn't know what to say, didn't know if he should. But before he could speak, another alarm blared. Different this time, louder, deeper, shaking the walls. "Emergency breach. Sector 9. Hostile forces detected." Liara's eyes hardened instantly, all softness gone. She grabbed his arm. "Stay behind me." Daniel's heart pounded. This wasn't over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The alarm shook the entire station. Lights flashed crimson and the floor vibrated beneath Daniel's feet. He clung to the doorway as Liara pulled him into the corridor, her violet eyes glowing brighter with every step. Crowds of humans and aliens surged through the halls, panic spreading like wildfire. Overhead, the voice of the station's command, AI repeated the warning. "Hostile forces detected in Sector 9. All participants evacuate to safe zones immediately." Daniel's chest tightened. "Safe zones? Where?" Liara cut him off, her voice sharp. "There is no safe zone, not for you. They are not here for random victims. They are here for humans." Her words froze him. He stumbled as they ran, trying to keep up with her long strides. "Why humans? Why me?" Liara didn't answer at first, her focus locked on the path ahead. But then, as they turned a corner into an emptier hall, she said softly, "Because you are new. Because your species is unpredictable. And because someone believes you do not belong here." Before Daniel could reply, a sharp sound sliced through the air, a piercing hiss. He looked up just in time to see a group of attackers step from the shadows. Their forms were cloaked in armor that shimmered like liquid metal, their eyes glowing red behind their helmets. One pointed at him. "The human. Take him." Daniel's heart stopped. Before he could react, Liara moved. Her entire body flared with crystalline light, shards of glowing energy forming around her like wings. She raised her hand, and a wave of force exploded outward, knocking two attackers back. "Run!" she commanded. But Daniel didn't run. His legs refused to move, frozen between fear and awe. He watched as Liara fought, her every motion elegant yet deadly. Blades of light formed from her hands, striking against the attackers' weapons. Sparks and energy bursts filled the corridor, painting the walls in glowing streaks. One attacker slipped past her defense, rushing straight at Daniel. Daniel stumbled back, panic flooding him. The armored figure raised a weapon. But before the strike landed, Liara was there, intercepting with a glowing shield that shattered the weapon to pieces. Daniel gasped. You saved me again. Liara didn't look at him, her eyes blazing with fury at the attackers. I will always save you. With one final burst of energy, she forced the attackers to retreat. Their voices echoed as they vanished into the shadows. This is not over. The human will be ours. Silence followed. Daniel collapsed against the wall, his chest heaving. His mind spun with questions, fear, and disbelief. He turned to Liara, who stood glowing faintly in the dim corridor. Why do they want me? What makes me so important? He demanded. Liara's glow dimmed slightly as she looked at him. Her face, usually unreadable, now carried a trace of sorrow. Because you are more than you realize. To them, you are not just a human. You are a symbol. If they break you, they break the hope your kind has brought to this galaxy. Daniel stared at her, stunned. Hope? I'm just one guy. I didn't even know this world existed until weeks ago. Liara stepped closer, her eyes softening. That is why you are dangerous to them. You do not see the limits they have placed. You act without fear of their chains, and that makes you powerful in ways you cannot yet see. Daniel's breath caught. For the first time, he felt a weight on his shoulders far heavier than he had imagined. He wasn't just a participant. He was a target, maybe even a threat to forces he didn't understand. Liara reached out, her glowing hand brushing his arm gently. Do not be afraid. You are not alone. I will stand with you. Her touch was warm, her gaze unwavering, and in that moment, Daniel realized something he couldn't deny anymore. Liara wasn't just protecting him out of duty. She cared for him deeply, maybe more than she was ready to admit. But before he could respond, another announcement echoed through the halls. All exchange participants report to the council chamber. Immediate assembly required. Daniel swallowed hard. He had the feeling this meeting was not going to bring comfort. It was going to reveal truths that would change everything. The council chamber was unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. It was vast, circular, and glowing with light that seemed to come from the very walls. Rows of alien representatives filled the seats, each from a different species, their eyes fixed on the humans gathered at the center. Some looked curious, others hostile, and a few looked openly disgusted. Daniel felt small standing among them, but Liara remained by his side, tall and steady. He could feel her presence like a shield, her violet eyes scanning the crowd with quiet warning. The silver-skinned instructor stepped forward. This assembly has been called because the program is under threat. One human has already been taken, and tonight another attempt was made. It is clear. Forces outside this chamber are working to destroy the exchange before it can succeed. A low murmur spread across the alien representatives. A heavy-voiced delegate with scales across his face stood. This is what happens when humans are allowed into our space. They are weak. They invite danger. Send them back to their world before more of us suffer. Another, with wings folded behind her, shook her head. No. The program was meant to test their place here. Abandoning it at the first sign of trouble would prove nothing but our own fear. The debate grew louder, voices clashing across the chamber. Some demanded the humans be removed immediately, others argued to protect them, and a few remained silent, watching carefully. Daniel's heart raced as he listened. He didn't know much about politics, but he knew one thing. Every word spoken decided not just his fate, but Earth's place in the galaxy. Finally, a representative with deep golden eyes raised a hand. The chamber fell silent. We cannot ignore the pattern. The attacks are precise, aimed at the humans alone. We must ask, who benefits from their failure? And why? The question hung in the air like a blade. No one answered. Daniel felt a knot tighten in his chest. He wanted to speak, to shout that humans deserved their chance. But before he could, Liara stepped forward. The light from her crystalline hair caught every eye as she raised her voice. It is not the humans who bring danger, she said firmly. It is those who fear them. I saw the attackers with my own eyes. They were not acting for peace. They acted out of hatred and fear. If we send the humans away, we do not protect ourselves. We prove the attackers right. Her words silenced the hall. Many delegates whispered, but no one interrupted her. Daniel stared at her in awe. She wasn't just defending him. She was standing against the entire chamber for his kind. The silver-skinned instructor finally spoke. The council will deliberate. Until then, all humans remain confined to their quarters. No exceptions. The meeting ended, but the air was thick with tension. As they left, Daniel leaned close to Liara. Why did you speak for me like that? You didn't have to risk yourself. Liara's gaze softened as she walked beside him. Because I will not let them decide your worth. I know it already. Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to answer, to tell her he felt something too, but his words caught in his throat. Instead, he stayed silent, walking with her back to their quarters. That night, Daniel lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He could still hear her voice, strong and unwavering, defending him before the galaxy. He had never felt more protected and yet more exposed. He turned his head slightly and saw her across the room, her figure bathed in faint crystal light. She wasn't watching the stars this time. She was watching him. And for the first time, Daniel realized the truth. Liara wasn't just guarding him because of the program. She was guarding him because she cared. Deeply, fiercely, maybe even dangerously. But what scared him most wasn't that she cared. It was how much he wanted her to. The next morning, the announcement came. A deep voice echoed through the intercom. Calm, but final. By order of the Galactic Council, all human participants are to remain confined to quarters until further notice. Unauthorized movement will be considered a violation of program terms. Daniel sat on the edge of his bed, the words sinking in like heavy chains. Confined. Controlled. Stripped of the freedom he thought this program promised. Across the room, Liara stood with arms folded, her glowing eyes cold and unreadable. For once, she didn't look at him. She looked at the wall as if she already knew this would happen. They don't trust us, Daniel muttered. They don't trust me. Liara's voice was quiet. Trust is fragile in this place. And humans are new, too new. Daniel clenched his fists. Then why bring us here at all? If they only see us as trouble, why pretend we have a chance? Finally, Liara turned to him, her violet eyes locking onto his. Because some of us believe you are more than what they see. But not everyone wants change. Some want to crush it before it begins. Her words made his chest tighten. He thought back to the debate in the chamber, the anger, the fear, the way some delegates had looked at him like he was nothing. It burned inside him, a mix of shame and defiance. Hours passed slowly. Guards patrolled the halls outside. The silence grew heavy. Daniel paced the room, restless. Liara remained still, her focus unshaken as though waiting for something unseen. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. Liara, why do you care so much about me? About humans? Her expression softened, though her voice carried weight. Because I have seen what fear does to this galaxy. It destroys. It divides. It silences. But you speak without fear. You laugh even when others glare. You look at me and see not a weapon, not a monster, but someone worth knowing. Daniel felt his breath catch. The truth in her words struck him deeply. No one had ever spoken to him like that, not even on Earth. But, before he could answer, a sharp sound rattled the door. A coded knock. 3 sharp taps, then silence. Liara stiffened instantly, her hand glowing faintly as she raised it, ready for an attack. The door slid open. A figure stepped inside, cloaked in shadows. It was another alien, tall and cloaked in dark fabric. His voice was low. If you value the human, you must leave. Now. Daniel's pulse spiked. Leave? What are you talking about? The cloaked figure's glowing eyes flicked toward him. The council cannot protect you. Tonight another attempt will come, stronger. If you stay, you will not survive. Liara moved between Daniel and the stranger, her body tense, her voice sharp. Why should we trust you? The figure lowered his hood just enough to reveal a scarred face, eyes burning with conviction. Because I was once hunted too. And I will not see another innocent fall. Daniel looked between them, his heart racing. Liara, what do we do? She hesitated, her glowing hand trembling for the first time since he met her. If we leave, we betray the council's rules. If we stay, we risk your life. Either way, danger follows. The room fell into silence, broken only by the hum of the station. Daniel stared at her, realizing the truth. This wasn't just about the program anymore. It was about survival. It was about trust. And as her glowing violet eyes met his, he felt something shift inside him. He didn't just trust her, he needed her. Finally, Liara turned back to the stranger, her voice steady once more. Then guide us. But if this is a trap, know this. I will burn this station before I let him fall. The stranger nodded slowly. Then we leave at nightfall. Daniel swallowed hard, his chest heavy with fear and something else he couldn't deny anymore. Liara wasn't just his protector. She was becoming his reason to fight. Nightfall came, though on the station night was only an idea. The corridors dimmed, lights shifted to softer hues, and the noise of activity quieted. But for Daniel, there was no rest. His heart pounded as he followed Liara and the cloaked stranger through hidden passages. The stranger moved quickly, his steps silent as though he had walked these paths countless times. He whispered instructions, pointing out guard routes and camera blind spots. Liara never lowered her guard. Her glowing hand hovered close to Daniel's back, ready to shield him at the slightest sign of danger. Every corner felt like a trap. Daniel's breath caught when a patrol passed nearby, their armor gleaming in the faint light. Liara pressed him against the wall, her body shielding his. He could feel the warmth of her crystal-like skin, her breath steady even as his chest tightened with fear. For a brief moment their eyes met and time seemed to pause. Her gaze wasn't just protective, it was filled with something deeper, something she didn't dare say aloud. The moment passed when the patrol moved on. The stranger gestured sharply. Move! Quickly! They descended into a lower level of the station, one Daniel hadn't seen before. The walls here were darker, older, the glow of technology weaker. This section was abandoned after the war, the stranger explained. Few guards patrol here. It will take you closer to the outer docks, Daniel whispered. And then what? How do we even escape? The stranger's scarred face hardened. A ship waits. Small, fast, hidden from scanners. But you must reach it before the council discovers your absence, or before the hunters return. The thought chilled Daniel. He remembered the red-eyed attackers, their voices promising he would be theirs. His stomach twisted at the idea of them closing in again. They pressed forward, but the silence broke when a metallic screech echoed behind them. Liara spun instantly, her body glowing as shadows moved in the distance. Figures emerged, too many. The hunters had found them. Run! The stranger hissed. Daniel ran, his legs burning, his breath ragged. Liara stayed close, blasting shards of light at the pursuers. The corridor lit with violent flashes as energy clashed against energy. The sound of combat thundered behind him, but Daniel kept moving, his mind screaming for him not to look back. Finally, the path split. The stranger shouted, "Left! The docks are this way!" Daniel skidded to the left, but when he looked over, his shoulder Liara wasn't following. She stood at the intersection, holding off the attackers, her body glowing brighter than ever, her hair like rivers of fire and crystal. "Liara!" Daniel cried, stopping in his tracks. She turned her head, just enough for him to see her eyes blazing with determination. "Go, Daniel, I will not let them touch you." But Daniel couldn't move. His chest felt like it was tearing apart. He couldn't leave her, not after everything she had done for him, not after what he had begun to feel. Ignoring the stranger's shouts, he ran back toward her. A hunter lunged, and Daniel grabbed a loose metal pipe from the floor, swinging it wildly. The blow connected, knocking the attacker aside. It wasn't much, but it gave Liara a brief opening. She stared at him in shock. "You fool! Why did you come back?" Daniel's chest heaved, but his voice was steady. Because I won't leave. You either. For a moment, everything froze. The hunters circled, but in the glow of Liara's light and Daniel's defiance, something stronger bound them together. It wasn't just protection anymore. It was loyalty. It was connection. The stranger's voice echoed from down the hall. We don't have time. If you stay, you both die. Liara's eyes burned brighter, but this time not with anger, with something softer. She reached out, grabbing Daniel's hand tightly. Then we fight together. And in that instant, Daniel knew. Whatever waited ahead, whether escape or capture, he would rather face it with her than live without her. The hunters closed in, their armor glowing red in the shadows, weapons humming with lethal energy. Daniel's grip tightened around the metal pipe in his hand, but he knew it was nothing compared to what they carried. Still, he stood his ground beside Liara, his chest heaving, his heart pounding. Liara's glow intensified, her crystal hair blazing like fire and starlight combined. She raised her hand, shards of radiant energy forming around her. For a moment, the corridor seemed to bend under her power. But Daniel felt the strain in her body, the way her shoulders trembled. She couldn't hold this forever. The leader of the hunters stepped forward, his voice deep and cold. Step aside, weapon. The human is ours. Liara's voice rang out clear and sharp. He is not yours. He will never be yours. The hunters charged. The corridor exploded into chaos. Energy blasts lit the walls. Shards of crystal light slashed through the air. Daniel swung wildly with his pipe, barely managing to block a strike. Liara fought like a storm unleashed, every movement precise and deadly. But the attackers kept coming. One hunter broke through, striking Daniel across the shoulder. Pain shot through him, but before the weapon could strike again, Liara roared, her entire body glowing so bright it burned the air. She threw herself forward, shielding him, taking the blow across her side. Daniel cried out, grabbing her as she staggered. Liara, you're hurt. Her violet eyes met his, fierce even through the pain. I will not fall, not while you stand. Something inside Daniel snapped. Fear turned into fire. He refused to watch her fight alone. With every ounce of strength, he lunged at the nearest hunter, swinging with desperation. It wasn't skill. It was sheer will. But somehow it worked. The hunter stumbled, and Liara finished him with a burst of energy. Together they fought, back, step by step, strike by strike, until the corridor shook with their combined force. Daniel realized something powerful. Alone he was weak. Alone she was hunted. But together they were unstoppable. At last, the hunters faltered. The survivors retreated into the shadows, their leader's voice echoing behind them. This is not the end. The human will fall. The weapon will break. Silence returned, heavy and sharp. Daniel collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. Liara knelt beside him, her glow dimming as exhaustion overtook her. Blood, if it was blood, shimmered faintly across her side, but she ignored it. Her hand touched his cheek gently. You should have run, she whispered. Daniel shook his head, his eyes locked on hers. I couldn't. I won't ever leave you. For a long moment, they stayed there, staring at each other in the dim corridor. No words were needed. The truth was clear in their eyes. The stranger reappeared, his voice urgent. The path is clear. The ship awaits. If you want to live, we must go now. With his help, they reached the hidden dock. A small vessel hummed quietly, ready to launch. Daniel hesitated at the ramp, looking back at the station that had become both a prison and a battlefield. What about the program? He asked. What about the council? The stranger's scarred face hardened. The council will debate forever. But what you two just did, standing together, human and alien, you proved more than they ever could. That is the beginning of change. Daniel looked at Liara. She was weak, yet her violet eyes still glowed, fixed on him with a warmth that pierced through everything. He reached for her hand, gripping it tightly. Then we'll face whatever comes, he said. Together. Liara's lips curved in the faintest smile, her voice soft but certain. Together. The ship lifted, engines roaring, stars stretching out before them. For Daniel, the future was unknown, filled with danger and doubt. But as Liara's hand remained in his, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He hadn't just signed up for an exchange program. He had found someone who would fight, bleed, and love beside him, and that, more than anything, would change the galaxy forever.